It's my privilege now to introduce and welcome the first panel discussion, which is on the future of digital payments and the cashless economy. Moderating this panel is V. Ramkumar, Senior Partner, Cedar and IBS Intelligence. Ram, may I request you to join me on stage? Thank you. I would now welcome the esteemed panelist, Mr. Bharat Panchal, Chief Industry Relations and Regulatory Officer, India, Discover Financial Services. May I request Bharat? Mr. Gautam Narayan, Partner, Apax Partners, LLP. Gautam. Mr. J.A. Chowdary, Chairman, Blockchain Committee at Bureau of India Standards, Government of India. Warm welcome, Mr. J. Chowdary. Mr. Mehul Mistry, Global Head of Strategy, Digital Financial Services and Partnerships, Wibmo, a PayU company. And last but not the least, Mr. Saugata Bhattacharya, Executive Vice President and Chief Economist, Axis Bank. Over to you, Ram.
Thank you. Thank you, Amit. After a very interesting power pack discussion, overload of data that we had this morning, I guess it's good to actually have some discussion around what we have been having on the digital payment space and what we see as the cashless economy as we move into the future. And I guess we would be having an interesting discussion both on what the journey we have traversed so far and also the journey that we are about to. As we saw some of the numbers that we saw this morning, it's quite interesting and quite fascinating. So if I may actually maybe start the discussion with you, Saugata, and you actually have been an economist and in talking about what we have seen as a 4% as a ratio of what we see to the GDP, and India is obviously now in the league that we are trying to catch up. How have you seen the journey we have traversed in the last 5 years on the digital payment space? And more importantly, as we move into this cashless economy, what is your forecast?
This has moved really significantly. I mean, in the morning, I saw a big piece in the papers with the Ministry of Electronics, mighty. So with a huge amount, 8 lakh crores, trillion rupees with the UPI payments. So I have some numbers here. From 2009, cash to retail electronic, I'm talking about retail, not the wholesale bulk. Cash to retail electronic transactions in 2009 was about 140%. In 2017, it dropped to 9%, to 2020, 7%. So that's the change that has come in. Retail electronic transactions to nominal GDP was about 9%, just the mirror of this. 9% in 2009, 56% in 2015, 159% in 2019, and 171%. I think it's more in 2020. The value of these small ticket transactions, those have increased enormously. NEFT is the largest payment. The retail electronic payments was 1.5 trillion rupees in 2012. This has gone to 20 trillion rupees in 2020. Mobile banking, this is the UPI, the mobile banking part. This is how data is classified. 1.1 trillion rupees in 2017, now about, as I said, 8.6 in 2020, FY21. So this is the scale at which retail electronic payments have increased. I mean, of course, cash still remains a significant part of total transactions. Our GDP is about $3 trillion, about at the end of this year, likely about 230 trillion rupees. Total cash is about 31 trillion rupees, 31 lakh crores. So cash still remains. So we were just talking about this, how do we move to a cashless society? It's not going to be a cashless society, it will be a less cash society.
I like that.
And countries, Japan is still extremely cash, the transaction led. On the other hand, the Scandinavian economies are almost no cash in the system. So I guess we'll be somewhere, but definitely our infrastructure, all of you, all the experts know here, the infrastructure that we have created for payments, retail payments, is world-beating, world-class, particularly the UPI, and that's been taken as a model. So sorry.
Lovely. From a cashless economy, the discussion is more on less cash economy, and quite like that articulation, Saugata. And I think that brings me to a very interesting perspective I want to take from you here, Mehul. And you've obviously you're a strategist, you've actually worked with banks and building a lot of fintech partnerships over the years. And as where we are today, the one question that we always see is, what is actually driving this change? Is it the latent customer demand that is manifesting in the adoption that we are seeing with such vigor? Or is it actually the arrowhead of innovation that technology is bringing to the table? And I'm sure the answer is somewhere in the middle, but if you had to pick between the two, where would your priorities and what would you pick as the driver for this change?
Sure. Ram, so what I would say is, what the customer is looking for is basically invisible payments, frictionless payments. Okay, that is what customer needs. And whatever innovation that we see, okay, in the market, whether it has been done by big technology companies or a pay tech companies, they are trying to remove that friction in the system. And, just to basically put some numbers. Okay, so 2013, 2014 is when, I was working on one startup. And the problem that I was trying to solve, not, it's just 10 years back, is basically to say that how do I make a payment gateway experience for a large marketplace, okay, seamless and frictionless for them. And what I've realized when I was trying to do a research is that 2013, 2014, 70% of the transaction on the marketplaces like Flipkart, etc., were COD, cash on delivery. Okay, I mean, it's just 10 years, right? 70% of the transaction. Today, if you log into Amazon, Flipkart, or Lenskart, etc., you don't see that option now. Okay, and most of the time you will see UPI as like one of the top payment options. So what the customer needs is basically a frictionless payment option. Okay, whether and all the technology companies are innovating on those lines. And I'll give you another example. So today itself, so today morning when I got up and I realized that basically we have exhausted basically shaving cream at home, right? And I was like, it's only 30 minutes. I have to rush for this conference here. And what I did is I went to Instamart. And then I went, I was getting ready. In 20 minutes, okay, the product came to my residence. Okay, and the payment happened seamlessly. I was not bothered whether I have to remove my card, etc. It just happened very seamlessly. So that is the change that has happened. And the change has happened because of various reasons, because of the technology infrastructure that has been created by the government, the policies that has been put forward by Reserve Bank, the technology infrastructure created by NPCI, all of that put together.
Interesting. So you see a lot of change that has been driven with the context of what has been done over the years, particularly by NPCI and the government. And that brings me to you, Mr. Chowdary. And you obviously have been, you are the chairman for the Indian Blockchain Association, and more importantly, you've been a founding director at STPI and been advisor to the governments and with many chief ministers, and you obviously have a lot of context from a governmental standpoint, right? And going back to where Mehul was indicating that a lot of the benefit that we're seeing today is based on the foundation that has been laid over the years. And we see that to be continuing as well. And some of the comments we saw this morning was alluding to how, and what Rajesh was talking about, as we have created an infrastructure today that enables us to do a lot of stuff that many other countries are waiting to do. So from that standpoint, and if I was to ask you, how has the government played a role and is playing a role from where you see things in this whole journey?
Thank you, Ram. Actually, if you see from the government's point of view, government did not really match up to the other countries in terms of creating the physical infrastructure compared to any Western countries and all that. But when it comes to the digital infrastructure, we actually surpassed even the most modern countries and the well-developed countries in terms of the digital infrastructure. Whatever you are seeing, the digital adoption in the country is, I don't think any country can match to what India at scale we are doing the digital adoption. I'll give you two examples. See, this physical conference I'm attending after 3 years. So recently I wanted to visit a temple in my native place. It's a small temple. After visiting the temple, I was coming out along with my daughter and son-in-law. And few beggars, they started coming for some money. So I looked at my purse. There were only 500 rupee notes were there. I told them that, sorry, I don't have change. One of the beggars says, sir, do you have Google Pay? I was really stunned. A beggar having a smartphone and talking about Google Pay. That is a kind of a digital adoption that India has come. The second thing which I observed when I was going to a farmer's market in Hyderabad along with my wife. Every farmer has got the QR code. Earlier, most of these vegetable vendors and all that, this thing, they used to only accept the cash. At every location, there was a QR code and just scan. Maybe COVID restrictions or whatever it is, they all adapted to the new technology of receiving the money and getting all that this thing. This is unheard of in the Indian context. In fact, I live in my village in the last 3 years. Earlier, most of the farmers, they're selling and buying and all cash transactions. Today, every farmer, they are using the smart mobiles and they're able to send their goods to nearby and receiving the payment digitally. So that's a kind of trust in the digital payment mechanism, digital infrastructure happened because Government of India, coming from the Aadhaar, India Stack, NPCI, setting up, creating the UPI, all this, the fundamental blocks and creating the trust factor among the end consumers, not about what you call urbanites and who are educated people, even uneducated farmers, uneducated people living in the rural economy, they are building the trust on the digital payments and digital economy. That's where, I see a lot of opportunities for startup companies. Today, in fact, we have a startup fund called Succeed Innovation Fund. We invested nearly about 35 companies in the last 1.5 years. And many of them are in the fintech space. Many of them in the agri-tech space. They are all, using the technology, using the backbone created by government. Government definitely, in terms of the digital infrastructure is concerned, definitely we have done very good, including the BharatNet. Somebody was mentioning that without the network, without the bandwidth, we can't have any meaningful business transaction. So I can proudly say that yes, starting from STPI days to advisor to Mr. Chandrababu Naidu when we were implementing the real-time governance. Real-time governance, if some farmer in a village, if he has got a problem, earlier they used to go to nearby MRO office, then collector office, and so many times they used to. Today it's not like that. You can simply complain that in the real-time governance environment that will go up to the chief minister level and they have to take immediate action, otherwise somebody will get a notice, digital notice to the officers. To that extent, I think we have gone digitally. I think digital, not only digital commerce, digital governance is also pushing the digital adoption in the country. And going forward, I see a lot of startups. I was discussing with some of the panel members today who are attending this meeting. A lot of unicorns are coming in the fintech space and other technology space, and that is going to increase. Earlier, every startup company, they used to go to Silicon Valley because market was in Silicon Valley, market was in other countries. Today, the market is in India. Where is the market of this billion people using the digital ecosystem? I think India is the biggest market in the entire world. That's the reason why you see most of the technology companies coming from Silicon Valley, they're setting up their operations in India. I think that is going to grow, and I am seeing a brighter, the new, Swarna Yuga for India. Through this digital economy that we have created, we are able to, definitely meet all the expectations of the not only the global citizens or in particular the Indian citizen, more importantly the rural citizens. I think we are able to meet the aspirations of the rural people in India through this bringing the level playing field, whether it's a poor farmer in a village versus urban rich, this thing, technology is the same. Whether, I don't think technology can differentiate between a poor farmer and a rich person in the urban areas. That's where you see a lot of adaptation is going to happen, and I see a lot of growth opportunities, particularly for the startup companies in India.
Thank you, Mr. Chowdary. Since we talked about unicorns and the new Silicon Valleys in India, I'll come to you, Gautam, and you see things from a perspective of an investor and as a partner of a PE firm. You see things in a very different light from what people would have seen from a technology standpoint, right? So we're talking about, we touched about 100 billion last October, the UPI payments. And if interestingly, we see the growth, from a value standpoint at 2x, but the volume standpoint at 6x. So you actually are seeing that the number of transactions are higher or growing faster, which means lower ticket size growth is faster, which means adoption is higher, as we spoke earlier. If you were to actually look at things from what would be the success factors and potentially the challenges or impediments that one should be watching out for from where we are, how would you see things?
Yeah, so, the three things we care about, right? If this sector has to prosper, our access, okay, which the NPCI and the government has delivered. The second is sustainability, and I'll come to some of the points you spoke about. And the third is trust, which Mr. Chowdary also talked about. So from our perspective, the thing which is in question today is sustainability. Because a lot of consumer surplus has got generated. A lot of surplus has got generated at a merchant level. But what about the PSPs? Okay, the leading listed PSP in India announced a quarterly loss of 780 crore in December, right? The funding is predicated on a path to profitability. Okay, as we sit here, that path has kept getting delayed. Every unicorn announces 1 quarter of profits just before the IPO, and magically those become, losses soon after the IPO. Okay. So the way we kind of see it, it's very important that there be a clear path to profitability. And unfortunately in payments, today, given the zero MDR, on the payment side, there is no profit to be made. So then the question is, what do these people do? Now, we've literally sort of cornered them at every stage, right? From wallets, there the profit disappeared. Now data, with the democratization of data, you don't have privileged access anymore. Lending can be a bit, ephemeral, right? It may not sort of last because the risk that these people are taking is disproportionate to the sort of returns that are there. So we are in a bit of a, tight spot. I would say that's a key thing which needs to be resolved. On the other front, see, access, we are largely there. I think there is some sort of incremental work to be done. Government is already thinking about it, feature phones, offline, all of that is already in the work. So I don't think there is much work to be done. The third area which Mr. Chowdary spoke about, trust, that again, and I'm speaking from personal experience, I ordered a nice bottle of wine from one of the, online portals. And later I found out that despite all my so-called sophistication around the space, I was a victim, okay? And it was not a small amount. So, with that sort of background, I've been a little jaded. So I don't know, not being a tech expert myself, I don't know how the backend works, right? So it is a bit of a black box to me, and it's created a little bit of inertia for going into high value payments, especially when the kind of entire journey is not very clear. So I worry about the consequences of cybersecurity, data ethics, data security, access to data. So these are all sort of critical issues which the government is also looking at. Once these three aspects are resolved, I think the sector has a very bright future.
Thank you, Gautam. I think that was very fascinating also to know about what, we are seeing from the growth comes with a shadow of cyber security, and maybe that would take me to the question to you, Bharat. And you obviously you're an expert in, you're architect of cyber security as your profile reads, and it's interesting that there was a point that is being made about so much that we don't see and some things sitting behind the scenes, and the whole security angle, not just about personal information, but also a lot of data sitting out there. As we move more and more into this digital payment space, then there is a shadow of vulnerability that comes along, right? So what would you think, is the risk? How would you view the risk that comes along? And more importantly, how do you see the regulations keeping pace with it?
Thank you, Ram. So before I answer to your question, let me take a little back to the cashless economy, what we were discussing. Because fortunately, I was part of the great digital journey of this country, being one of the top executive and founding member of NPCI, led the security, risk and compliance for a good 9 years. Seen the growth from just 32 banks on NFS to last product as FASTag. So I have seen certain things very closely, probably may not be aware to the public. So when we are talking about 5 billion transactions today on UPI, and as what Mr. Chowdary was talking, similar experience happened with me as well. When I was in Chennai last week, I went to one temple, and one flower merchant was there, and the people accompanying me told to that lady that she was having QR code, and I just asked that, okay, has it, your business has grown, or do you see any impact? She was very, very vocal on this thing, that yes, sir, because earlier, if person comes to buy 10 rupees flower, either they don't have a change, or, I don't have a change, and because of that, they never used to, pay attention for this. Now, since, because this QR code is there, they just come, do it, and, my business has gone 50 to 70%. And to my surprise, then my friend told that, okay, he's a man who was part of the design. She literally came and touched my feet. So that's a kind of proliferation what we have done. But it was a time in 2012 when we launched IMPS, we literally pushed the bank that, hey, do some transaction. We used to do internal transaction, and it was a celebration after 1,000 transactions in 2 weeks. From there to 5 billion. I think there's a phenomenal journey what we have achieved. And if I had to take you back a little more, and Rajesh may be aware, in 2008 when we launched OTP, single factor, second factor authentication, people laughed at it in India. That, oh, you guys don't have tele-density, you don't have a remote, last mile connectivity, how are you going to deliver it? Today, I think India has the most sophisticated yet very, very safe and secure payment system because of multiple things. One, there was the great thing, probably in my personal experience, if I have to say, not having legacy in technology is a blessing. And I think we ride upon that. When we thought about, all revolutionary products, be it UPI or be it IMPS or RuPay or, fasting and everything. There was no scale and, kind of design available anywhere in the world, and we venturing to explore something new. And thankfully, the government policies or, the regulators' vision, bankers supported a lot. Because of that, all this miracle, I would say, because, for me, a lot of blood and sweat has gone to have all this product as a reality, what you all are enjoying today. But in this whole journey of last 10, 12 years, probably one good thing, if I have to tell you about, when it comes to risk and security, I think I was so blessed to have complete free hand from regulator, from board, from my management, that anything about safety and security, no compromise. I think that has really given a lot of support to, when I talk about safe, secure, and affordable payment system, I think one key ingredient of that is about security. Because, we all agree that safety, security, and quality are something which you can't add at the icing of the topping, right? Because, it's something you can't add at last layer. Thankfully, every product, security is by design, and that is what is ensured in everything. The thing is today, and coming back to, the original answer, that what risks are there? The risk is, first is a digital illiteracy. I think that is the fundamental issue today. Digital illiteracy, because is a socio-economic system can be disturbed by greed and ignorance than the technology loophole. And that is what is my personal experience, because probably the collectively kind of cyber attack and fraud which I have seen, maybe collectively this room also may not have seen, being in NPCI, and I have seen how people have made silly mistakes. It is same in technology, it is same in uses and all. But when it comes to cyberspace today, See, the paradigm shift in terms of volume and value and product and all we are talking, this is fine. But there is a paradigm shift as well in the behavior of people, the availability of, the system for, doing banking, that is also changed. When it was a time where we used to stand in a queue, or rather we used to take half-day leave to do banking, right? It is all fingertips. मेरे पास, Google Pay है, that's it. That's a reality. But at the same time, the journey of technological changes or challenges arrived because of this new wave of fintech that is literally ignored. Because when banks are not the techie company, if they start competing with the technology company, then they are losing the primary business, that is bank. They have started outsourcing. Now the same kind of strategy, same kind of, the depth, same kind of, monitoring for all parameters, which is very, very important from the security aspect. Who is going to monitor? That is one important loophole. The second point, while with all due respect to the technology partner worldwide and especially in India, they have made fantastic ecosystem, but there is a lacuna in terms of the regulation to regulate them. Because see, when there are a lot of regulation to banks are passing those regulations to the fintech, but there is no, strong compliance mechanism by which you can ensure that, all these regulations are uniformly across. Because, one bank has at least 50, 60 different technology partners. How are we assessing that risk? Last but not least, the cybersecurity is, while we are, looking in the pockets that, my bank, my ATM, my customer, my branch, days are gone. I mean, and Rajesh also mentioned about the 4I concept, all these are now obsolete. This is not going to work. Collectively, you are putting all the eggs in the single basket. That's the flip side of technology. Because if something goes wrong, where in physical banking, you had watchmen, you had, maker, checker, so many things. And there'll be somewhere, there'll be kill chain. In cyberspace, there's no kill chain, unless you are very, very, prompt to detect and respond to that. If that goes wrong, today morning, there is one of the dangerous hackers group in the world called Anonymous. They have hacked the Central Bank of Russia. They have got 45,000 important files in their control. Imagine that happened to one of the smallest bank here. We are fortunate. We have seen Hitachi. We have seen, the Cosmos Bank. We have seen Union Bank Swift. Those are very, very minuscule compared to what larger issue happen around the world. We are still immune. We are not going to be immune. We are safe till the time we are not hacked. That's a golden statement. So how are we going to plug those gaps? I think that's a challenge in today's time, because we are at the point of no return. You can't survive without your mobile. You may get divorced with your wife, but you can't divorce with your mobile, right? And when we launched UPI, Nandan told that, this is going to be WhatsApp moment for India. I think we have gone to the stage where we have forgotten WhatsApp. People are talking only UPI, right? So that we are not going to detach from our life. We have to survive it. So it may not be wrong to say that roti, kapda, makan, that's the basic necessity of life. You have to put cybersecurity before that. Because if you do not take cybersecurity with so much of seriousness, you will have trouble to get roti, kapda, and makan at the end of the day.
You're safe until you're hacked. Thank you so much, Bharat. I guess we will go into round 2 and we'll make it a little interesting. And this is one question I have for all the panelists, and we'll start with you, Mr. Chowdary.
Yep.
And the question is this: if you had to make one prediction, or you want to state one expectation that you have for the quote-unquote cashless economy as we move forward, what would that be?
Before I answer that question, the kind of issues for cybersecurity in the digital economy, actually when I was with the AP government as the Special Chief Secretary, we have one group, self-help group called Dwakra. They're all women-led cooperative, this thing. They transact a lot of businesses. And some of the women entrepreneurs, part of this self-help group, they were hacked by some hackers and they lost a lot of money. That's when Honorable Chief Minister, Mr. Chandrababu Naidu asked us, can we do something, how to create a secure mechanism? Then we gave a idea that why don't we create a digital tokens. Though RBI that time they were not interested in introducing any digital currency or cryptocurrency, but we did not say crypto, say digital tokens. We issue the digital tokens based on some standard fiat currency value, and they transact among themselves with those tokens. Whenever they want to encash, I mean, they get, they can convert that into whatever the fiat. So that idea was liked by him. We were about to introduce that. In the meanwhile, government fell and...
Solutions evolve, as you're saying.
Yeah. So I see whatever the problems mentioned, the security problems, it's again a great opportunity for the startup companies. And they have to fix those problems, and obviously they will be in the business. So I see that opportunity as an answer to your question. We still have a lot of issues to be resolved in even the digital space. That's a great opportunity for our entrepreneurs.
So you see, your prediction is the way you see even more entrepreneurs coming into the startup space.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Mehul, if I go with you, your one prediction or expectation?
Yes, so, because of the digital infrastructure which has been created by the government, okay, what I see is this open banking is something which will basically scale up. So today, if you see all real-time payments, okay, whether it is IMPS, UPI, about close to 50% of the real-time payments are not happening through banking channel. Okay, so and when I'm saying banking channel, so people would transact using the front end, which is not of a bank. So let's say Google Pay, Phone Pay, these are not licensed entity. But if you see in next 3 to 5 years, this 50% of the transaction which are only happening through banking channel and remaining 50% by non-banking channel, about 75 to 80% will start happening from non-banking channel. So you would see a customer making payment from Zomato, and the transaction also will get complete from Zomato. So Zomato would have like a third-party application from a bank, and the transaction will happen from there. So that is one trend which I see happening. The other piece is the point-of-sale terminal, the way we have seen today, right? Basically, so point-of-sale terminal for last 10, 15 years, what has happened is that a merchant wants to collect payment. Similarly, the way a customer wanted to do a frictionless payment, the merchant also wanted to not get into that pain of taking card swiping, waiting for the receipt to come out and stuff like that. If you see, at times there is a QR code at the merchant, you scan, customer can make payment to that QR code, and you realize there is one box lying somewhere, okay, and that would read saying that received payment of 50 rupees, right, something like that. So the merchant is not getting disturbed from his normal other things. Payment is happening seamlessly. So what I see is from this point of sale terminal based transaction at the merchant location, a lot of these transactions will happen on the QR code, or it would combined along with the point of sale terminal. So the POS will be Android POS, okay, a QR code would get generated there, and then the transaction will happen seamlessly. This is something which I see definitely happening in next 3 to 5 years. And the traditional POS that we see right now in the market, to a large extent, will completely disappear in 3 to 5 years.
Interesting. So it's not only less cash, it's also less POS as well. Saugata, what would your view on your prediction or expectation be?
Not expectations. I think the next frontier, probably the last frontier in payments is cross-border. Extremely inefficient now with the SWIFT system that we all hear about. So that's the next part, cross-border payments. I think this is something BIS, the Bank of International Settlement, is running a program called Nexus, linking, they have about 6 or 7 countries now. About 60 countries now have an instant or a fast payment systems. So now they are trying to, Bharat, you would know this, now they're trying to link the systems from there. And obviously the last frontier, I'm not sure if the last frontier is the digital currencies, the CBDC, the central bank digital currencies. So 9 countries now have actually introduced a CBDC. India is probably one of the leading pioneers, and many programs on the retail, wholesale, the Dunbar project, the Rapier project, I don't remember that name, the retail parts. So that's probably the one that now is going to be the next move from digital onto a different
Interesting.
payment mode. Different.
So cross-border and CBDC are your picks, yeah? So maybe I'll go with you, Bharat, next.
So, okay, I'm not good at prediction, but I live in reality. So, we have heard about the proliferation of, on scale and volume in system. But, if I have to see from the digital currency and digital ecosystem perspective, what we are cherishing today, it is about 20% people living in India. We have yet not have that great moment for 80% people living in Bharat. And I think that is where the larger market. But, the case is very different here because, you and me haven't gone to learn how to use WhatsApp or Facebook and all. But my old age father in village, he doesn't know how to use UPI because he is fond of having a feature phone. You have to educate that society. You have to keep them, the confidence is one of the key factors, be it digital banking or physical banking, right? How are you going to gain that trust coming from that part of the pocket of this country? That is going to be the biggest challenge. That is point number one. The second point is, again, we are in aggregated market. We all are talking about the great aggregator model, PA, PG, VSP, all this is. Are we not becoming critical or, kind of, very focal point where it can make or break, right? Because so far we are talking about the critical infrastructure, only the power sector or atomic or, kind of thing. Banks are also becoming critical infrastructure today. And not only bank, there are fintechs. Those are hosting 100, 200, 300, 500 banks in their environment. What if something goes wrong to them? How are we going to protect them? I think, when we are talking about the digital currency and all, thankfully it is plug and play model for us. I mean, and very nicely put by Rajesh that we have ecosystem already created. We have to just plug in. And it is up to people to use it. But, we have very, sweet difficulty here. Like, compared to Idli Sambar versus Gujarati Thali. Payment system or option available in India today is so much so that people are really confused. They whether to go with PhonePe, Beam or UPI or, Google Pay, or I have to go and do bill payment using BBPS. So much of confusion. So probably the consolidation is one part where, because, when, people want to do frictionless, maybe less POS, less UPI, anything. That is where the next generation, what I believe. But from the security point of view, I believe that we need to really think differently about securing our transactions, securing our infrastructure. Because when it comes to a sabotage or war-like situation between what is happening between Russia and Ukraine, Ukrainian hackers have brought down around 2,000 websites of Russia without crossing the border. And unfortunately, all big cyber attack of this country, which I have investigated, I knew from where it happened. We couldn't go and catch that guy who did from Ukraine or Lithuania or Cyprus damage our banking system. And that will remain fact forever. How are we going to cope up with those challenges? We need to have skilled resources, those who think out of box, just not VAPT, simple pen tester. Because, we are still believing, when it comes to security, larger perception is that it is an operational risk. It is a business risk. It is a business risk, and that mindset has to be changed right from the board to the last person working for the organization, that it can hamper your business, and there is no revert from the point where you lose your credibility in cyberspace. I think that is where we are heading.
Interesting. So it's not just digital illiteracy, but cyber risk illiteracy that also has to be handled.
Agreed.
And consolidation is your prediction. Thank you, Bharat. Gautam, your words.
Yeah, I think we started from a realm of saying less cash, then we moved to less ATM, then we moved to less cards, now we are saying less POS, okay? I would say that going forward, less product. I think there is a scenario where there can be less banking, with CBDC. So look, I think the key to me is coexisting, with offline versus online, with banking versus cards versus POS versus everything, right? And for that, the right equilibrium and the right ecosystem has to be set. And the other thing which has been echoed in great depth is the risk of security. Now, I got conned, but so did the Bank of Bangladesh, right, the central bank. So I'm not embarrassed, but it is a real threat, and it can sort of magnify over time.
Thank you, Gautam. I think we did want to take some questions from the audience, but I guess we are running short of time. But I can take one question if I see a hand going up there. So, go ahead.
So I have a question around education, educating the customer. I think during the breakfast we were discussing how do we educate the end user or the customer that this digital payment is actually it's a safe and secure form of it's so that it's actually safe and secure and it's easy to adopt. So I'm not talking about the India which is here in the urban cities. I'm talking about rural people. How can we do that?
If I may answer on your question. See, the cybercrime, especially fraud in banking, which I have closely seen, 70% of fraud in our country happen out of greed. And that irrespective of village or Mumbai or urban or metros, irrespective of that. 20% happen out of ignorance. 5% happen out of threat that your account will be blocked and you may not be able to do it. 5% out of technology or technology loophole. That's my experience, I'm saying.
So it's psychological and human.
This is psychological. How are you going to change the tendency of people? Because the moment you say something, that I'm giving you freebie, we do not think, how are we going to change the mindset? It is impossible task. We don't want to talk about the level of education, what banks are imparting for the customer is pointless. I mean, there is not worth you to discuss. What we can do, how are we changing the predictability of the genuinity of the transaction or the way you are behaving in the digital world with your digital footprint? AI, ML, this technology can help you, but not to full extent. We have to live with that risk. And eventually, see, when you are carrying your wallet in your purse, in your pocket, you don't leave it, something like, without any attention, right? How are you behaving so casually on digital world? There's a fundamental problem.
Yeah.
There is no technology which can change this mindset.
Thank you, Bharat. There was one question I'll take. I guess we'll have to wrap after this. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everyone. My question is to you, Mr. Chowdary. So, sir, there is a saying, with power comes responsibility. So, what are the risks you see with this rising wave of technology, especially blockchain and AI being the backbone of techno startups? And what are the measures are we planning to prevent or tackle these risks? Thank you.
Closing now.
If I understand your question properly, how the blockchain is going to be adopted in the country?
Correct, sir.
Okay. See, some of the panelists already mentioned about the security risks, particularly for common people. In fact, when I was with the government, we were looking at, see, a lot of people, when they get admitted into the hospitals today, our sensitive information is in the hospital. We don't know whom all they're selling that information, right? We don't have any clue. They will give one single page of discharge summary. That's it. We don't have any access to our own sensitive data. So we were at that point of time, we were trying to blockchain the entire information so that without the permission of the patient, that information cannot be shared. And even if suppose I am the patient, I want to give the permission to the hospital to use my health data to some pharma company. I expect the hospital to pay me the royalty because they are using that information to sell that to some pharma company. If you can link up that data privacy using the blockchain technology, even the end users will be benefited. They will be commercially also be, at the same time, I know that who are all using my personal data and where the personal data is going. I think with the Data Privacy Act getting enacted in the Parliament and with the blockchain technologies now getting the standardized in the country and also elsewhere, I think a lot of blockchain adoption may happen in such cases where the data privacy is topmost concern for the people. Once they get the confidence, yes, my personal data, my information is secure, then I think adoption of blockchain will automatically happen.
Thank you. I'm afraid we don't have time, but you are more than welcome to take the questions with the panelists separately in offline. Yeah. But I must say it was a long discussion from the content standpoint, but it was short from a time standpoint. Thank you so much for your valuable time and insightful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.